Little Bighorn's hidden truth, told by Sioux warriors who fought. It's a good day to die. The battle cry echoed across the Little Bighorn as Sioux warriors faced Custer's approaching troops. By sunset, over 260 U.S. soldiers lay dead in what would become America's most infamous military defeat. For 150 years, the battle has been portrayed through Custer's mythology, brave soldiers overwhelmed by savages. But what if everything you thought you knew about Little Bighorn was wrong? Through the vivid accounts of Sioux eyewitnesses like Crow King and Red Horse, a different truth emerges, not of savagery, but of brilliant military strategy against an arrogant invader. The surprise of Reno's attack and the Sioux response. The morning of June 25, 1876 began peacefully in the vast Sioux encampment along the western bank of the Bighorn River. Although rumors had circulated about Long Hair, Custer pursuing their camp, Crow King later recalled that none of them anticipated an immediate battle. The extensive village, stretched across a flat valley, was engaged in its usual daily activities. According to Gall's testimony, Sioux scouts had observed the soldiers since early morning as they crossed the divide. The watchful eyes continued their surveillance as Reno and Custer separated their forces. Flying Hawk remembered how some people in camp noticed dust clouds in the distance, suggesting approaching troops. A tribal chief soon confirmed this threat when he spotted a flag on a pole atop a nearby hill. While the morning progressed, normal life continued in camp. Iron Hawk was eating his first meal of the day, having overslept. Red Horse was digging turnips with 4 women some distance from the camp. Rain in the Face was attending a feast in a young man's lodge that belonged to a club. The calm was deceptive. Suddenly, a scout galloped into camp, shouting warnings of approaching white soldiers. Crow King described how moments later a second scout arrived, confirming the danger and providing crucial intelligence. The army had split into 2 groups, with one circling to attack from another direction. The order to move the camp was immediately issued. The first attack targeted the Hunkpapa section of the encampment. Red Horse noted that the Hunkpapa lodges occupied the highest position along the river, making them the first to face the assault. Flying Hawk witnessed soldiers forming a long line and firing directly into the lodges, hitting women and children. Crow King specified that the soldiers began firing from approximately 400 yards away. This was the first sign of trouble, Flying Hawk recalled. The response within the Sioux camp was swift but organized. Women quickly grabbed their children's hands, carried the smallest ones, and scattered in all directions. Iron Hawk saw children running up from the river where they had been bathing, as all women and children rushed down the valley. Gall reported that they hurried downstream toward the Cheyenne encampment. Red Horse added that many sought shelter in a coulee along the Little Bighorn River. Meanwhile, the men prepared for battle. Crow King explained their initial strategy. We retreated slowly at first to give our women and children time to escape, while others returned for horses. Iron Hawk only managed to throw a rope around one horse as the others fled in panic, though his brother had secured his mount and helped round up the remaining horses. Gall emphasized the crucial role of women and children who helped catch horses for the warriors. Rain in the Face rushed to his lodge to gather his rifle, bow and arrows, and the stone war axe he typically carried. Just as he prepared to confront Reno, he noticed another group of soldiers appearing almost directly opposite, at the edge of a long cliff across the river. All mounted warriors immediately redirected toward the downstream area, toward Ford. Around Rain in the Face were Oglala, Minneconjou, Cheyenne, and some Hunkpapa warriors, most of them very young men. Red Horse remembered that the soldiers attacked so quickly there was no time for counsel. After leaving the council lodge, he received instructions from all directions amid the chaos. Gall, who was with Sitting Bull at the point of Reno's attack, observed that the assault was so rapid that the Native Americans had no choice but to fight. As sufficient warriors assembled, the counterattack began. Flying Hawk identified Kicking Bear and Crazy Horse as leading the assault. Iron Hawk described warriors charging toward the soldiers, mounting their horses, with many Hunkpapa gathering in the bushes and woods near where the soldiers had stopped and dismounted. The counterattack proved powerful and effective. Red Horse recounted how all the Sioux simultaneously attacked the soldiers, driving them in disarray across the Little Bighorn River. Many soldiers drowned in the swift current. The remaining troops were forced to halt on a hill, surrounded by Sioux warriors. Gall confirmed that once mounted, they pushed Reno back into the woods. The situation quickly turned into chaos, Gall noted. Sioux attacked Reno, Cheyenne fought against Custer, and everything became confused. Despite this disorder, the Native American response demonstrated remarkable tactical coordination. The horses that had initially scattered in panic ran toward the Mini-Conjou area, but the Sioux managed to round them up in time, according to Iron Hawk. Many Hunkpapa gathered in the thickets and woodlands near where the soldiers had stopped and dismounted. As Crow King concluded his account of the first engagement, after pushing back the first attack, we Sioux warriors returned to camp. This moment of relative calm would be brief, however, as Custer's main force approached from another direction, setting the stage for the next phase of what would become one of the most infamous battles in American history. The battle against Reno on the hill, and Custer's force emerges. After their initial success against Major Reno's troops, the Sioux warriors found themselves in a momentary position of advantage. Crow King recounted how the soldiers had been driven up onto a defensive position on the hill. The soldiers retreated to higher ground, where they were more difficult to attack directly, he noted. With this immediate threat contained, the warriors briefly returned to their camp to regroup and assess the situation. This moment of respite proved short-lived. As we returned to our lodges, Crow King recalled, a second attack by white soldiers appeared. Though they couldn't immediately identify the commander, they believed it was Custer's force. These soldiers began firing from a considerable distance, nearly a mile away, signaling the start of what would become the next phase of the battle. By this time, the Sioux had fully mobilized their impressive fighting force. Crow King noted that approximately 80 warriors comprised his immediate band, but the total number was far more substantial. All Sioux from everywhere were present, warriors as numerous as leaves. Their massive encampment stretched more than 2.5 miles along the river, housing thousands of people from various tribal bands. Gall's account clarified the sequence of events following Reno's retreat. The Sioux attacked Reno, forcing the American soldiers to abandon their outdoor defensive positions and withdraw into the woods along the river. This tactical success against Reno allowed the Sioux to redirect their attention when Custer's threat emerged. A few minutes later, Crazy Horse led the first attack against Reno's forces. Gall added, showing how the Sioux maintained pressure on Reno even as they prepared to confront Custer. Red Horse provided additional detail about the containment of Reno's troops. After pushing Reno's men across the river, the Sioux surrounded them on the hill. This established siege would continue throughout the battle, preventing Reno from supporting Custer. The tactical importance of keeping Reno's force isolated cannot be overstated. It allowed the majority of Sioux warriors to confront Custer without fear of being attacked from behind. An interesting development briefly diverted the warriors' attention, according to Red Horse. A Sioux messenger arrived with news that another group of soldiers had captured women and children as prisoners, he recalled. This news spread like wildfire, and all Sioux abandoned the soldiers on the hill to rush to rescue the women and children. This report later proved false, but it demonstrated the warriors' priorities in protecting their families and their ability to rapidly redeploy their forces. Red Horse described the terrain between Reno's hill and the location, where they spotted Custer's troops as predominantly flat, interrupted only by a small creek. This topography would play an important role in the battle's development, offering limited natural cover for either side. The Sioux expected Reno to attack them from behind as they engaged the new threat. Red Horse noted, but when this didn't happen, they surmised Reno's troops had exhausted their ammunition. Flying Hawk provided crucial information about Custer's positioning. Custer was located farther north than these soldiers, Reno's men, planning to attack the lower end of the village. This intelligence about Custer's intended flanking maneuver proved vital to the Sioux response. Flying Hawk continued, After pushing back Reno's force, all Native Americans now had horses, guns, bows and arrows, and war axes. They charged the soldiers on the hilltop from the east and north. This coordinated pressure kept Reno pinned down, while other warriors moved to intercept Custer. Ironhawk's testimony revealed how the warriors rapidly repositioned to confront the new threat. After that, everyone turned downstream, shouting, "It's a good day to die." The soldiers were advancing from the other end of the village, though none of us knew their numbers. This battle cry demonstrated the warriors' resolve as they prepared to meet Custer's force. Ironhawk and his companions, primarily Hunkpapa warriors, gathered strategically on the east side of the river, at the foot of a ravine leading up to the hill, where the second group of soldiers was positioned. Rain in the Face described the developing encirclement of the white soldiers. The leading warriors had nearly surrounded the white troops, and more warriors were crossing the river continuously. He observed that the soldiers had dismounted and were firing into the camp from the top of the cliff. This tactical situation created the conditions for the upcoming confrontation. Rain in the Face also provided valuable insight into Sitting Bull's role during this critical phase. I didn't see Sitting Bull there initially, but later learned he had been with others confronting Reno, about 3 to 4 miles from Custer's position. Crow King clarified this point, noting that Sitting Bull didn't directly participate in the fighting, but instead provided tactical direction. This strategic leadership helped coordinate the Sioux response to the dual threats they faced. As the warriors prepared to engage Custer's force, they maintained their containment of Reno. Rain in the Face recalled, later, Sitting Bull joined the attack on Custer, though he wasn't among the first to engage. This indicates the fluid nature of the battle, with warriors and leaders moving between the two engagement zones as needed. The Sioux now found themselves in the advantageous position of having divided the 7th Cavalry into isolated groups. Crow King described how the warriors pivoted to confront Custer. The Sioux turned to face the second group of soldiers. He detailed their tactical approach. Most warriors concentrated in front of the soldiers and charged simultaneously, while others circled around to flank and surround the cavalry. Rain in the Face noted the diversity of warriors gathering to face Custer. Many very young men, some armed only with stone axes or war clubs, prepared to join the battle. This description highlights how the Sioux mobilized fighters of various ages and experience levels, with warriors using traditional weapons alongside captured firearms. As the Sioux positioned themselves to confront Custer, they maintained awareness of Reno's potential threat. Red Horse emphasized this tactical consideration. The Sioux thought the soldiers on the hill Reno would attack them from behind, but they did not do so. This failure by Reno to support Custer would prove critical to the battle's outcome. The rapid Sioux response to Custer's approach demonstrated their tactical flexibility and coordination. Without a centralized command structure in the modern military sense, they nevertheless executed complex maneuvers effectively. Crow King noted that no chief held greater authority than others during the battle, yet their actions showed remarkable synchronization. Ironhawk's description of warriors gathering at the foot of a ravine leading up to the hill where Custer's troops were reveals how the Sioux used terrain to their advantage, positioning themselves for an uphill assault while remaining protected from direct fire. The chiefs coordinated the warriors with the battle cry, "Hi-ye-ye," which Crow King explained was a command, instructing all warriors to observe and follow the chief's actions. This simple but effective command system enabled large numbers of warriors to act in concert despite the chaos of battle. At this critical juncture, with Reno's force contained on their defensive hill, and Custer's troops appearing as a new threat, the Sioux demonstrated superior tactical awareness and flexibility. They maintained pressure on Reno while simultaneously preparing to confront Custer with the majority of their fighting force. Rain in the Face observed the strategic disadvantage now facing Custer's men. When the soldiers were surrounded on two sides with the river on the third, the attack order was given. This encirclement would prove decisive in the coming confrontation. The stage was now set for the main engagement. With Reno's force effectively neutralized on their defensive hill, unable or unwilling to advance to support Custer, The Sioux could concentrate their superior numbers against Custer's isolated command. The warriors' positioning, their containment of Reno, and their rapid response to Custer's approach demonstrated a level of tactical sophistication that would soon result in one of the most stunning defeats in U.S. military history. The battle against Custer and his complete defeat. With Reno's forces effectively contained on their defensive hill position, the Sioux warriors turned their full attention to Custer's approaching column. This decisive phase of the battle would unfold with remarkable speed and devastating consequences for the 7th Cavalry. According to Gall, after defeating and forcing Reno to retreat, all Sioux forces turned toward Custer and fought until his complete annihilation. The timing proved critical. A Reno officer later confirmed that, after they were pushed back onto the hill, there was more than an hour without engagement. Gall concluded, this was likely when the Native Americans concentrated their forces against Custer and destroyed him. Custer's exact movements remain a subject of historical debate, but Flying Hawk's testimony provides crucial details. When Custer approached the lower end of the camp, he began descending into a ravine, but the Native Americans surrounded him, and he attempted to fight. Contrary to some accounts that Custer reached the river, Gall stated, Custer never reached the river, but was stopped about half a mile up a gulch now called Reno Creek. However, historians note this specific geographic claim contains inaccuracies. The tactical situation deteriorated rapidly for Custer's forces. Rain in the face described the developing encirclement. When the soldiers were surrounded on two sides with the river on the third, the order to attack was given. This three-sided containment left Custer with limited options for maneuver or retreat. What followed was a complex, multi-phase engagement. Red Horse noted that Custer's soldiers established 5 different brave defensive lines as they attempted to maintain their position. The Sioux approach proved sophisticated and coordinated. Red Horse described how all Sioux gathered courageously and charged forward to attack the soldiers. They advanced only a short distance before spreading out to surround the troops. Ironhawk witnessed the soldiers' increasingly desperate situation. I saw soldiers beginning to run down the hill toward us. Most were on foot, perhaps too terrified to know what they were doing. They waved their arms as if running quickly, but were actually walking. Some fired their guns into the air. This disorganized behavior suggested the cavalry's discipline was breaking down under pressure. The Sioux response was immediate and overwhelming. All Sioux shouted Hoka and charged forward to attack, riding their horses around the soldiers in the twilight, Ironhawk recalled. The warriors employed both traditional and modern weapons in the assault. Rain in the Face observed that the soldiers fired as rapidly as possible, while the Sioux primarily used bows, arrows, and war axes. Young warriors demonstrated particular bravery. Rain in the Face described how many very young men, some armed only with stone axes or war clubs, charged into the formation, knocking down soldiers and causing their horse herd to panic. Ironhawk personally engaged in close combat. I encountered a mounted soldier and shot an arrow through his body. I beat him to death with my bow out of anger when thinking about the women and children who were fleeing. Gall provided insight into the equipment failures that plagued the soldiers. The Native Americans ran out of ammunition and shot arrows from horseback. The soldiers' rifles jammed with empty cartridges, forcing them to discard their rifles and fight with pistols. This mechanical failure significantly disadvantaged the cavalry at a critical moment. The Sioux employed sophisticated tactics, targeting the soldiers' mobility. Gall explained, warriors concentrated fire on the horse holders while others fought. When the horse holders were killed, warriors used blankets and loud yells to panic the horse herd, preventing soldiers from escaping. This deliberate strategy effectively eliminated Custer's ability to withdraw or reposition his forces. Some soldiers mounted desperate attempts to escape the encirclement. Rain in the Face observed, eventually, several soldiers mounted horses and fled along the hillside toward Reno's position. But Sioux warriors pursued them like hundreds of blackbirds chasing an eagle. Individual escape proved nearly impossible. Flying Hawk recounted one such attempt. A soldier tried to escape eastward, but Crazy Horse spotted him, leaped on a horse, and pursued him, capturing him half a mile from where the others lay dead. Despite their increasingly hopeless situation, the cavalry fought with determination. Crow King acknowledged, they maintained their formation and fought courageously to the last man. Gall similarly noted that the soldiers fought desperately and fiercely, never surrendering. He specifically mentioned 2 companies that displayed particular bravery. Keogh's and Calhoun's companies dismounted and fought as infantry, never faltering, retreating step by step until they were driven up the hillside and all were killed. They were shot down in their positions. The battle's intensity produced significant casualties on both sides. Red Horse provided rare specific numbers regarding Sioux losses. The Sioux suffered many casualties in this attack, 36 killed and 160 wounded. This represents one of the few quantifiable accounts of Native American casualties from the battle. The concentration of Custer's forces in their final position is evidenced by Gall's observation that Keogh's company rallied together, but all were killed together. 38 bodies from Keogh's men were found piled together. This suggests a last stand scenario where soldiers gathered for a final defense. The chaos of battle created confusion even among the warriors. Rain in the Face admitted, during that battle, the excitement was so great that we could barely recognize even our closest friends. This fog of war extended to identifying key figures like Custer himself. No one recognized Custer during the battle, not knowing if he was alive or dead, Rain in the Face recalled. Several accounts mention a particular incident involving an unidentified commander. Rain in the Face related, it's commonly said that a young man with only a war club charged through the formation and knocked down the commander early in the battle. They believed he was the commander because he stood upright, waving a knife and large sword above his head while shouting loudly. Whether this was actually Custer remains uncertain, as Rain in the Face continued. An unidentified person later shot the commander, and he presumably died. Flying Hawk described the battle's climactic moments. When the Sioux surrounded them, the battle ended within an hour. Thick dust made clear vision impossible, but Native Americans rode horses around them, shouting and shooting at the soldiers as rapidly as possible until all were dead. The speed with which Custer's entire command was eliminated surprised even the Sioux. Crow King stated simply, not more than half an hour after Long Hair attacked, he and all his soldiers were dead. The immediate aftermath saw systematic collection of weapons and supplies. Flying Hawk recounted, as the smoke cleared, the Sioux dismounted and took the soldiers' rings, money, and watches. They also took clothes and all rifles and pistols, capturing 700 firearms. Some warriors also donned the soldiers' clothing. Red Horse noted, some Sioux removed clothes from dead soldiers and wore them. Among the soldiers were some white men who weren't military personnel. The Sioux wore the clothing of these soldiers and white men when fighting the soldiers on the hill. Peculiar incidents occurred during the battle's aftermath. Iron Hawk witnessed a funny scene, 2 fat old women undressing a wounded soldier who was playing dead. When they had removed all his clothes, they began cutting off a certain part, at which point he jumped up and fought with the 2 old women, but was eventually stabbed to death by another woman. After Custer's defeat, the warriors' attention returned to Reno's besieged force. Crow King recounted, after destroying Custer's force, the Sioux returned to deal with the first group, Reno. They fired on this group until sunset. They surrounded and guarded them throughout the night. Red Horse similarly stated, after eliminating all the different soldiers, referring to Custer's force, the Sioux returned to eliminate the soldiers on the hill. The Sioux maintained this siege until new intelligence arrived. Red Horse continued, the Sioux guarded the hill until another Sioux reported many infantry soldiers approaching. The appearance of these infantry troops saved the soldiers on the hill, as the Sioux feared them and quickly withdrew. This fear of infantry reinforcements ultimately changed the battle's trajectory, preventing the complete destruction of Reno's command. Iron Hawk described the ongoing harassment of Reno's position. The Sioux couldn't inflict much damage on them there because they had dug trenches for cover. He witnessed soldiers attempting to gather water. I was down by the river and saw some soldiers coming down for water with buckets, unarmed. Some boys hiding in the bushes rushed out. throwing mud in the soldiers' faces and chasing them into the river. They killed these soldiers in the water. As the day concluded, Iron Hawk and others returned to camp. Near sunset, Iron Hawk and many others went home for dinner, while some remained to watch the soldiers on the hill. This casual return to domestic activities highlights the warriors' confidence in their victory and control of the battlefield. A curious aspect of the battle's aftermath involved the search for Custer himself. Rain in the Face recalled, "After the battle, the chiefs ordered a search for long hair among the dead, but they found no chief with long hair. Custer had cut his hair short before beginning this campaign." This detail explains why the Sioux initially failed to identify Custer's body, creating confusion about whether they had indeed killed the famous long hair. The battle produced lasting controversies about who killed Custer and other specific incidents. Rain in the Face addressed some of these rumors. "Many lies have been told about me, some saying I killed the commander, others claiming I cut out the heart of Custer's brother, Tom Custer. But during that battle, the excitement was so great that we could barely recognize even our closest friends." He insisted, if there was any mutilation, it was done by old people, noting that looting only began after all soldiers were dead. During the battle, Rain in the Face observed distinct tactical patterns. There appeared to be two different movements among the Native Americans. One group moved in a circular pattern, while another charged straight through and across the soldiers' formation. This observation reveals the complex and seemingly spontaneous coordination of Sioux forces during the engagement. Honors were claimed after the battle through the traditional practice of counting coup, touching enemies to demonstrate bravery. Rain in the Face noted, "After the first attack, the Sioux counted coup on the bodies of those who had fallen. One warrior named Appearing Elk later possessed some of Longhair's weapons and was jokingly credited with killing the commander, though Rain in the Face doubted this claim." The aftermath saw a clear division of activities. "Everything happened very quickly," Rain in the Face recalled. "After the battle, young men chased horses across the prairie, while old people and women looted the bodies. This systematic collection of valuable resources, especially horses and weapons, represented both practical necessity and traditional spoils of victory." Flying Hawk mentioned one particularly notable trophy. One of the captured horses was a sorrel with white stockings. Later, some of Flying Hawk's relatives said they had seen Custer riding that horse when he was en route to the Bighorn. The capture of Custer's personal mount would have represented a significant honor. As darkness fell, the Sioux maintained their position around Reno's beleaguered forces on the hill. The complete destruction of Custer's detachment, 5 companies of the 7th Cavalry, including their commander, represented an unprecedented victory for the Sioux and their allies. Through superior numbers, tactical coordination, and fierce determination to defend their homeland, they had delivered one of the most stunning defeats in U.S. military history. Red Horse offered a tactical assessment that many military analysts would later echo. If the soldiers had not divided their forces, they might have inflicted greater casualties on the Sioux. Instead, the fragmentation of the 7th Cavalry allowed the Sioux to defeat each portion separately, beginning with the containment of Reno and culminating in the complete annihilation of Custer's command. The stunning victory at Little Bighorn would enter both American and Sioux history as a defining moment, though with vastly different interpretations and consequences for each side. After the battle, as the dust settled over the Little Bighorn battlefield, the Sioux warriors maintained their siege of Reno's surviving forces while processing their unprecedented victory over Custer. The transition from intense combat to contemplation revealed complex perspectives that would later challenge simplified historical narratives about the battle. According to Crow King, even as they surrounded Reno's beleaguered troops, voices of restraint emerged from Sioux leadership. A chief from the Unpapa called for an end to firing on Reno's group on the hill, saying they had been punished enough. This sentiment was reinforced by Sitting Bull himself, who ordered a ceasefire, stating that these soldiers were only following orders. This unexpected mercy suggests a nuanced approach to warfare that contrasts with popular depictions of Native American fighters. Crow King offered a candid tactical assessment, acknowledging that different decisions by the 7th Cavalry might have produced a different outcome. If Reno had held his position until Custer arrived and then fought as Custer did, they might have defeated the Native Americans. He elaborated that such coordination would have forced the Sioux to divide their forces to protect women and children, giving the white men an advantage. This strategic analysis demonstrates the Sioux leaders' sophisticated understanding of battlefield dynamics. Despite their victory, the Sioux suffered significant losses. Crow King reported personal tragedy. "I lost 2 brothers in the battle." He estimated overall casualties at about 30 to 50 Native Americans killed, with many wounded who died later. Red Horse provided more specific figures, citing 36 killed and 160 wounded among the Sioux. These numbers, though varying between accounts, challenge the notion that the victory came without significant cost. The pursuit of Reno's forces continued into the next day. Gall recounted, "I returned to the Reno battle the following day and positioned warriors along the river, where they conducted particularly brutal sniping at Americans volunteering to collect water. This ongoing harassment prevented Reno's survivors from descending safely to the river, intensifying their desperate situation." Historical accounts from U.S. Army officers corroborated the leadership roles of specific Sioux chiefs. Gall noted that Edward Godfrey identified Crow King and Crazy Horse as the guiding spirits on the battlefield for the Free Sioux and Cheyenne. This recognition of individual tactical leadership challenges stereotypes of disorganized savage warfare. The battle carried deeply personal meaning for many warriors. Gall revealed that when Reno initially attacked, "He killed 2 of my wives and 3 of my children, breaking my heart, and afterward I fought with an axe," implying a particularly fierce combat style driven by personal loss and grief. This testimony highlights how immediate family trauma fueled warrior determination. The Sioux recognized that strategic errors by the U.S. Army contributed significantly to the outcome. Red Horse observed, "If the soldiers had not divided their forces, they would have inflicted more casualties on the Sioux." This tactical insight has been echoed by military historians ever since. He added that after defeating both forces, the Sioux seized guns and ammunition from the dead soldiers and used them to surround and engage the remaining soldiers on the hill. The siege of Reno's position continued until external developments forced a change. Red Horse recalled, "The Sioux maintained the hill siege until a Sioux scout spotted infantry troops approaching. The warriors' reaction revealed a significant tactical calculation. Upon seeing them, the Sioux became fearful and quickly withdrew. This fear of infantry reinforcements ultimately saved Reno's remaining forces." Red Horse provided environmental details that affected the battle. The banks of the Little Bighorn were very steep, and many soldiers died attempting to cross the river. He also noted that the soldiers on the hill dug trenches, and the battle continued at long range with occasional Sioux attacks. After the battle, different activities occupied different groups within the Sioux camp. Rain in the Face observed, "After the battle, young men chased horses across the prairie, while elderly people and women looted the bodies." This systematic division of post-battle responsibilities reflected traditional roles within the community. For many warriors, the battle represented a defense of homeland rather than aggression. Rain in the Face reflected, "I fought for my people and my country. When conquered, I remained silent as a warrior should." His poignant observation that the spirit of Rain in the Face left him when he laid down his weapons before the Great Father, U.S., reveals the profound psychological impact of the Sioux's eventual surrender and confinement to reservations. Iron Hawk described the simple return to daily life after the battle. After the battle ended, the Sioux returned to the women and children. They gathered those who weren't killed or wounded. He noted the personal deprivation experienced during the fighting. "I hadn't eaten all day because trouble began just as I was starting my first meal." As the day concluded, near sunset, I and many others went home for dinner, while some remained to watch the soldiers on the hill. Despite their decisive victory, both Crow King and Low Dog expressed a nuanced view of responsibility. They didn't feel blameworthy for the Custer battle or its outcome. It was war, they were attacked, Custer tried to kill them, and they killed him. This straightforward assessment challenges narratives that portrayed the battle as a massacre rather than a military engagement. Crow King expressed remarkable respect for his adversaries, noting great admiration for the courage of Custer and his soldiers. He reflected that the battle impressed upon the Native Americans the superiority of white men, and that continuing to fight them would lead to the destruction of Native Americans. This prescient observation acknowledged the broader strategic reality despite the tactical victory. Gall contributed to some enduring misconceptions about the battle. Historians note that he falsely claimed Custer never descended Medicine Tail Coulee or attempted to cross the Little Bighorn to attack the village. These discrepancies highlight how individual perspectives, even from direct participants, can differ on specific details. The battle's immediate aftermath saw pragmatic concerns take precedence. The Sioux collected valuable resources from the battlefield, with Flying Hawk noting they gathered rings, money, watches, clothing, rifles, and pistols, capturing 700 firearms. This substantial acquisition of weapons would prove valuable in subsequent conflicts. As infantry reinforcements approached in the days following the battle, the Sioux made the strategic decision to withdraw rather than confront these fresh troops. Their victory at Little Bighorn, while complete, would prove to be the beginning of increased military pressure, rather than a turning point in the larger conflict. Sioux eyewitness accounts recast Little Bighorn not as a massacre, but as a strategic military victory where coordinated Native tactics overwhelmed a divided cavalry. These testimonies balance traditional narratives by highlighting the warriors' tactical sophistication and homeland defense. Beyond combat details, they reveal conflict's human dimensions, personal losses, mercy, and philosophical reflections. These authentic voices from greasy grass preserve essential perspectives often missing from American history, enriching our understanding of this pivotal battle through those who experienced it firsthand.